Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise to bring you the essential insights from complex topics.
Great to be here.
Today, we're plunging into a gripping, often bizarre, and always chilling aspect of American history. We're talking about the failed assassination attempts on U.S. presidents, president-elects, and even former presidents.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic, but really fascinating when you dig into it.
Absolutely. And this isn't just going to be a chronological recounting. Our mission, really, is to uncover a crucial question. Is there some kind of discernible psychopolitical pattern connecting these, seemingly disparate acts of violence?
Are they just isolated incidents of madness, or is there something deeper? A more troubling interplay, maybe, between an individual's private turmoil and the public narratives of their time.
Exactly. Because the U.S. presidency, it's more than just a job, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. It's a living, breathing symbol of the nation. It absorbs all the hopes, the anxieties, the frustrations, and that unique symbolic weight. Well, it makes it a perpetual target, a lightning rod for all sorts of extreme grievances, personal pathologies, radical ideologies.
It's that the individual holding that office becomes the focal point for everyone.
The whole populace, yeah. Which, unfortunately, also means they become the ultimate target for people looking to make a statement or avenge some perceived injustice, or maybe just catapult themselves to a really twisted kind of infamy.
So as we go through this, you'll discover how these personal issues can merge with specific political climates.
Right, and how technology and security have evolved in this deadly sort of cat and mouse game.
And why that individual at the heart of the American Republic just continues to be this magnet for extreme grievances.
It's a constant dynamic.
Now, just a quick note on what we're not covering today, just to keep our focus really sharp.
Good idea.
We'll be deliberately excluding the 4 tragic, successful assassinations: Lincoln, Garfield, McKinley, and Kennedy. We need separate deep dives for those, really.
Agreed. And we also won't be speculating on mere plots, things that never led to any actual physical action.
Right. We're honing in specifically on the dynamic of the failed physical attempt itself, that moment of confrontation.
Did you miss?
Exactly. So get ready for some surprising facts, deeply researched insights, and maybe some real ha-ha moments that might just change how you view these pretty dramatic events in American history.
Okay, so let's start by maybe chronicling these attempts, moving through history to understand the unique context of each one.
Sounds good. And we should start at the very beginning with what might be the most bizarre first attempt on a U.S. president. We're going way back to 1835, President Andrew Jackson. What a story this is.
It really is, and it kind of sets a foundational precedent for understanding that interplay between, individual psychology and the political environment. Picture this. Yeah. It's February 1835. President Andrew Jackson, he's already a legend, right? Veteran of duels, man of iron will. He's attending a funeral for a congressman on the steps of the U.S. Capitol.
Right outside the Capitol building.
Exactly. As he emerges, this unemployed house painter named Richard Lawrence steps out from the crowd. He raises a single-shot pistol, fires at Jackson from point-blank range.
Wow, point blank. And what happens?
Unbelievably, the pistol misfires. Just nothing.
Just clicks. Incredible luck.
You'd think that's the end of it, right? But no. Jackson, who was, 67 years old at the time?
Yeah, 67, not a young man.
He doesn't flinch, doesn't run. Instead, he apparently lets out a roar and just charges Lawrence with his walking cane, ready to beat the guy down himself.
Charges him with a cane.
While Jackson's advancing, Lawrence pulls out a second identical pistol, fires again.
No, a second one.
A second one. And in maybe the most incredible twist of fortune for any president ever, the second pistol also misfires.
Both misfire. That's statistically improbable, to say the least.
It's staggering. Bystanders, including Congressman Davy Crockett, apparently.
Davy Crockett was there.
Supposedly, yeah. They swarm Lawrence, subdue him. Jackson, meanwhile, is still furious. Reportedly had to be restrained from continuing to beat Lawrence with his cane.
So this wasn't your typical political hit then, was it? What was actually driving Lawrence?
Oh, not at all. The investigation, the trial later, it painted a really clear picture of profound mental illness.
Yeah.
Lawrence had this grandiose delusion.
Which was?
He genuinely believed he was the rightful king of England. Or sometimes he thought he was King Richard III.
King Richard III, okay.
And he believed President Jackson was a usurper who was basically preventing him from claiming his throne and, crucially, accessing these vast sums of money he thought were his. He thought Jackson stole his inheritance.
So a complete break from reality.
Completely. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity, spent the rest of his life in asylums.
But here's where we start to see that psychopolitical pattern emerge, isn't it? Even though Lawrence was clearly deranged, the political climate back then, the 1830s, it was intensely polarized. Jackson's opponents, the Whigs especially, they denounced him as a tyrant. They famously labeled him King Andrew, didn't they?
They absolutely did. King Andrew I for his, expansive use of executive power, especially fighting the national bank.
So that public rhetoric, that political narrative.
Exactly. It didn't create Lawrence's illness, obviously, but it provided a ready-made script. It gave him a tangible enemy for his private delusion.
So his belief about being the true king found a perfect villain in the man being publicly called a false, tyrannical king.
Precisely. The political narrative basically shaped the manifestation of his private pathology. It gave him a framework, a target for his violent act. And it really reveals something profound about how even the most, irrational acts can echo the public discourse of the time. It directs the aim.
And the reaction afterwards was just as telling, wasn't it? People didn't just accept it was one disturbed individual.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Immediate conspiracy theories exploded. Jackson himself was convinced Lawrence was a hired gun paid by his political enemies.
And his opponents.
They claimed Jackson staged the whole thing for sympathy. It showed this deep-seated difficulty, maybe still present today, in accepting that sheer irrationality could just intersect with major historical events.
It was easier to believe in a big conspiracy than just random, tragic madness.
Yeah, a pattern we'll definitely see again.
Okay, moving forward a few decades, we get another really shocking incident that just underscores the vulnerability of the presidency. This time, Abraham Lincoln, 1864, a year before he was actually assassinated.
Right, the unseen warning shot. It's almost impossible to comprehend today, the lack of security.
To paint the picture, August 1864, late evening.
Lincoln, as he apparently often did, is riding his horse, alone, on a 3-mile journey from the White House to the soldiers' home.
That cottage outside the city where his family stayed in the summer, right? To escape the heat and disease.
Exactly. He's riding alone at night during the Civil War. And suddenly, a rifle shot rings out in the darkness.
Just out of nowhere.
And a bullet tears straight through his famous stovepipe hat, mere inches from his head, knocks it right off.
Inches.
His horse bolts, carries him to safety. They found the hat the next morning. Clean bullet hole right through it.
And the sniper.
Never seen. Never identified. Hidden in the darkness. But given it's 1864, heart of the Civil War, Washington full of Confederate sympathizers and spies, there's little doubt what that was.
A Confederate agent trying to take out the Union leader.
Almost certainly. A deliberate attempt to decapitate the Union government.
What really strikes you the most about this, thinking about presidential security now?
Just the incomprehensible lack of protection. The commander-in-chief prosecuting a brutal civil war in a city crawling with enemy sympathizers, riding completely unguarded at night.
It wasn't just an oversight.
No, that was just the norm then. This incident is such a critical baseline for understanding how extremely vulnerable the 19th century presidency was. There was no Secret Service detail protecting him. The idea hadn't even really formed yet for the president.
It really puts into stark relief how things have changed. That permanent assignment of the Secret Service came much later, didn't it?
Decades later, yeah. And it was direct reaction to repeated bloody lessons. This near miss, this warning shot, sadly, it went unheeded for far too long. The lessons often came tragically after the fact.
Fast forward again, 1912. Now we have a case that truly brings that psychopolitical synthesis into sharp focus. Theodore Roosevelt, the bull moose, campaigning for an unprecedented third term. This one has some incredible details.
Oh, it really does. October 14th, 1912. Milwaukee. Roosevelt's about to give a campaign speech. A saloon keeper named John Schrank steps out of the crowd, shoots him at close range with a .38 revolver.
But the bullet didn't kill him, obviously. What happened?
Well, incredibly, the bullet's impact was significantly blunted by two things in Roosevelt's breast pocket. His steel-reinforced eyeglasses case.
Wow.
And a thick 50-page folded speech manuscript. The speech was titled, "Progressive Cause Greater Than Any Individual." Almost prophetic.
So the paper and the glasses case slowed the bullet down enough.
Enough to prevent a fatal wound, yeah. He was wounded, bleeding, but then, ever the showman, Roosevelt famously declared, "Friends, I shall ask you to be as quiet as possible."
I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose. Classic TR.
Exactly. And then, unbelievably, he proceeds to deliver his entire 90-minute speech, holding the blood-stained manuscript before agreeing to go to a hospital.
90 minutes with a bullet in his chest.
Yep. The bullet stayed lodged in his chest muscle for the rest of his life. They decided it was safer to leave it in.
Incredible. Now, Schrank's motivation here is really key, isn't it? It wasn't simple.
No, it's particularly instructive. He was a staunch opponent of a third presidential term. That was a coherent political belief, shared by many people who were wary of Roosevelt's ambition, his stretching of presidential power, a clear political conviction.
But
crucially, this political belief was fused with profound mental illness. Schrank claimed the ghost of assassinated President William McKinley had visited him in a dream.
the ghost of McKinley.
Yeah, Clay McKinley pointed at a portrait of Roosevelt and said, "This is my murderer, avenge my death."
So it wasn't just one thing or the other, it was both working together.
Absolutely. It's a perfect illustration of how a political conviction can be, let's say, catalyzed and given a violent imperative by delusion. The political belief that a third term was wrong, un-American, gave his psychosis a specific target.
And the delusion, McKinley's ghost, gave his political belief this supernatural mandate for violence.
Precisely. He genuinely believed he was acting on divine instruction to save American democracy. You couldn't just label him an ideologue or a madman. He was a fusion. It really demonstrates how a pre-existing political narrative can be absorbed and weaponized by a disturbed mind. A potent, dangerous combination.
Okay, next up. Just before his first inauguration, 1933, President-elect Franklin D. Roosevelt narrowly escapes death in Miami. This one was pure mayhem.
Miami mayhem, yeah. February 15, 1933, FDR had just given a short speech from his open-top car in Miami's Bayfront Park. Suddenly, he's targeted by Giuseppe Joe Zangara.
Who is he?
A diminutive, chronically ill bricklayer. He actually stood on a wobbly chair to try and get a clear shot over the crowd. Fired 5 shots from a .32 pistol at the presidential motorcade.
And tragically, he missed FDR, but he hit Chicago Mayor Anton Cermak, didn't he?
Yeah, Cermak had just walked up to Roosevelt's car to shake his hand. He was mortally wounded. Zangara's aim was already pretty poor, apparently, but was further disrupted after the first shot. A spectator, a woman named Lillian Cross, actually hit his arm.
Quick thinking. Saved FDR's life, probably.
Very likely. Sent the other shots flying erratically into the crowd, wounding 4 others. Zangara was grabbed immediately. His trial and execution were incredibly swift.
Executed just 33 days after the attack, wasn't it? Astonishing speed.
Yeah. Zangara's motivation, though, it reveals this man whose intense personal suffering became deeply politicized.
How so?
He suffered from chronic, agonizing stomach pain, horrible pain, and he blamed it on his life of poverty, hard labor. This constant physical pain basically became indistinguishable from his political rage.
So he hated authority.
A profound kind of anarchist-tinged hatred, especially kings and presidents, and the capitalists he believed were responsible for all the exploitation and specifically for his own personal misery. He connected his physical agony directly to the political class. There's that quote.
I kill capitalists because they kill me stomach like drunk man.
That's the one. He literally projected his internal pain onto the figures of power.
What's interesting is how investigators at the time viewed his motives, right?
Yeah, they were quite inclined to dismiss his political motivations because he wasn't formally part of any organized anarchist group.
Even though his anti-capitalist, anti-government talk was clear.
Crystal clear and consistent. But they wanted to box him in as just a lone, irrational actor rather than someone influenced by a broader ideology, even if it was self-taught or filtered through his pain. It really highlights how official interpretations can be shaped by preconceived notions about what political means.
Shows that strong ideology can exist outside formal groups and be really deeply shaped by personal grievance.
Exactly.
Okay, moving into the mid-century, we see a really distinct shift. The 1950 attack on Harry Truman while he was at Blair House because the White House was being renovated. The Blair House gunfight, that felt different.
Oh, profoundly different. A real turning point. November 1st, 1950, 2 Puerto Rican nationalists, Oscar Collazo and Griselio Torresola, launch a direct frontal assault on Blair House.
This wasn't opportunistic or, delusion-driven.
Not at all.
Yeah.
This was a desperate, violent act of political terrorism. Essentially a suicide mission designed to bring global attention to the cause of Puerto Rican independence. It was orchestrated, planned, in direct response to U.S. action suppressing nationalist uprisings in Puerto Rico. A political act.
And it turned into a fierce gun battle, didn't it? Right there on Pennsylvania Avenue.
A really intense, minute-long gun battle. Truman himself actually appeared at a second-story window for a moment, looked out at the shooting.
Seriously?
Yeah, before agents pulled him back, one assailant, Taressula, and one Secret Service officer, Private Leslie Caulfield, were killed.
And Caulfield's actions were heroic, weren't they?
Incredibly heroic. Even as he was dying from multiple gunshot wounds, he managed to fire one last shot that killed Taressula, almost certainly saving Truman's life.
Yeah.
Collazo was wounded and captured.
This really was a critical turning point then, for security, for understanding threats.
Absolutely. Because it wasn't driven by individual delusion or personal grievance like so many earlier cases. Collazo and Torresola were soldiers in a political cause. They were motivated by a shared belief system, what we'll later call an extreme overvalued belief, in armed struggle for national liberation.
So it signaled a shift towards politically motivated, ideologically driven attacks becoming much more prominent.
Exactly. It was a calculated act of war, in their eyes, by a nationalist movement. It forced security agencies to confront the reality of organized political terrorism targeting the president on U.S. soil.
Now, the Nixon years, 72 to 74 specifically, seem defined by a kind of desperation. And we see Arthur Bremer and Samuel Bike. These cases really highlight the idea of target substitution, don't they?
They absolutely do. These two attempts, though neither actually harmed Nixon directly, they powerfully illustrate that for certain types of assailants, the specific target can almost be secondary to the act itself.
Okay, let's take Arthur Bremer first,
Yeah.
1972.
Right. Bremer, a young guy totally consumed by this desperate need for fame, for notoriety. He stalked Nixon's motorcade, planned to shoot him, but he just couldn't get a clear shot, couldn't get close enough.
So what did he do? Give up? Try again later?
Nope. Instead of giving up or re-strategizing on Nixon, he just shifted his focus. About a month later, he shoots Governor George Wallace, who was running for president at the time, paralyzed him.
And Bremer's diary made his motive clear.
Oh yeah, crystal clear. Meticulously kept diary. It wasn't political grievance against Nixon or Wallace primarily. It was this desperate desire for notoriety. He wanted to be noticed, make a splash, achieve some twisted form of immortality. He literally wrote something like, I'm going to shoot one of these big boys. No matter who it is, it's a statement.
Just wanted the attention. Then there's Samuel Bike in 1974. Different kind of desperation.
Yeah, Bike was an unemployed former tire salesman. Deeply aggrieved. Convinced he was a victim of systemic injustice, and he blamed the Nixon administration specifically for his personal failures, his financial ruin.
And his plan was audacious, to say the least.
Operation Pandora's Box, he called it. He hijacked a commercial airliner. His explicit intent was to crash it into the White House to kill Nixon.
Hijack a plane to crash into the White House. In 1974, that's chillingly prescient.
It really is. He shot the pilots trying to gain control of the plane. He was killed himself in the ensuing standoff with law enforcement on the tarmac before he could take off.
So for Bremer, the specific victim was secondary to getting famous. For Bike, Nixon was the ultimate symbol of the system that had wronged him. What does this tell us about the presidency as a symbol?
It profoundly demonstrates that for certain types of attackers, the presidency is the ultimate prize and most potent symbol. But other prominent figures can serve as stand-ins if that primary target, the president, proves too difficult to reach. The office itself, or the sheer fame it confers, can be more important than the individual. It really speaks to the magnetic power of that symbolic position.
Okay, following close on that, Gerald Ford faced 2 attempts within just 17 days, September 1975. This really makes you think about a possible media contagion effect, doesn't it?
It's highly compelling. The timing. First, September 5th, in Sacramento. Lynette Squeaky Frum.
From the Manson family.
Exactly. A devoted follower of Charles Manson. Emerges from a crowd, points a .45 pistol right at Ford. It clicks. Doesn't fire.
Why not?
She hadn't chambered around. She pulled the trigger on an empty chamber. That detail probably saved Ford's life.
And her motive? Manson-related, obviously.
Yeah, bizarrely protesting environmental destruction and corporate greed as part of the Manson cult's, idiosyncratic and violent ideology.
Yeah.
Basically trying to draw attention to their cause.
Okay, then just 17 days later, September 22nd, different California city, San Francisco.
Another woman, Sarah Jane Moore, this time a radical leftist, she fires a .38 revolver at Ford.
And missed.
Her aim was core, yeah. But also, crucially, a bystander, a former Marine named Oliver Sipple, instinctively lunged and grabbed her arm just as she fired again, deflecting the second shot. Likely saved Ford's life, too.
2 attempts, 17 days apart, both women, same state. What was Moore's goal?
Her stated goal, aligning with her radical beliefs, was to spark a violent political revolution. She thought assassinating the president might kick things off.
So that shocking proximity, It really suggests this media contagion idea.
It strongly suggests it, yeah. Formosa's attack got massive, sensational media coverage, wall-to-wall news, and that could easily have served as a powerful catalyst for more.
How so?
Well, it potentially lowered her own psychological barrier to acting out. It provided a kind of script for political violence, showing it was possible for an ordinary person to get that close, making the idea maybe less abstract, more real. It really underscores the crucial and sometimes dangerous role of mass media in this whole psychopolitical ecosystem.
Then the attempt on Ronald Reagan in 1981. This feels like a real watershed moment because the motive was just completely decoupled from politics, wasn't it? The shot for a starlet.
Yeah, absolutely. March 30, 1981, President Reagan's exiting the Washington Hilton Hotel after a speech. John Hinckley Jr. steps out, fires 6 shots from a .22 revolver in less than 2 seconds. Chaos ensues.
Reagan was hit, but not directly, right?
A ricocheting bullet hit him under the arm, lodging near his heart. Very close call. And tragically, Press Secretary James Brady suffered devastating brain injuries, left him permanently disabled. 3 others were also wounded.
And the motivation, this is the part that's just so bizarre.
Entirely personal, pathological, really. Hinckley had this profound obsession with the actress Jodie Foster.
Stemming from the movie Taxi Driver.
Directly from that film, yeah. Where Robert De Niro's character attempts to assassinate a presidential candidate to impress a young prostitute played by Foster. Hinckley saw himself in that character.
And he explicitly said this was his motive.
Oh, explicitly. In a letter to Foster written just hours before the shooting, he said he wanted to impress her by sacrificing his freedom. He hoped this grand, historic act of violence would somehow make her notice him, maybe even love him.
So the target, Reagan, was almost incidental.
Almost entirely. He'd previously stalked President Jimmy Carter with the same goal in mind. Reagan wasn't a political enemy to him. He was a prop in Hinckley's private psychodrama. A means to an end in this desperate quest for a movie star's attention.
So this case really forced a reevaluation of what political violence even means, didn't it?
It completely did. It decoupled the act of targeting the president from any discernible political motive. It challenged the core assumption that such acts must be inherently political. It showed that sometimes the motive is purely pathologically apolitical.
Moving into the 90s, we see different challenges, modern weapons, different legal arguments. 1994, Bill Clinton faced the White House gunman.
Right. Francisco Martin Duran, U.S. Army veteran. October 29, 1994. He stands on the public sidewalk outside the White House fence and fires at least 29 rounds from a semi-automatic rifle at the White House itself.
29 rounds at the building.
Yeah. Incredibly brazen. President Clinton was inside, in the Oval Office apparently, completely unharmed. But it was a sustained attack on the symbolic heart of American power.
And Duran's defense tried the insanity plea, didn't they? Leveraging Hinckley.
They did. Claimed he suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, had this bizarre delusion about an alien mist commanding him to shoot the White House.
But the prosecution argued otherwise.
Argued he was faking the mental illness, that he was actually motivated by a clear, albeit extreme, hatred for the government. And the jury agreed with the prosecution.
They rejected the insanity defense, convicted him of attempted assassination.
Yeah. And this case really highlights the profound challenge juries face with these complex mixes of psychological issues and political motivations. It also maybe suggests a growing public and legal skepticism toward insanity claims in political violence cases, especially amidst the rising anti-government rhetoric of that time. A greater willingness, perhaps, to hold individuals responsible, even if their beliefs seem outlandish. It underlined how hard it is to draw a clear line.
The 21st century then brings global threats right to the forefront, underscoring that presidential security now has to be truly global. 2005, George W. Bush, the Tbilisi grenade incident.
Yeah, this was chilling, happening on a global stage. May 10, 2005, Bush is giving a speech in Freedom Square, Tbilisi, Georgia, alongside the Georgian president. A Georgian national named Vladimir Arutunian throws a live Soviet-made hand grenade towards the stage.
How close did it get?
Just 61 feet from President Bush, landed in the crowd.
A live grenade, why didn't it explode?
Miraculously, he had wrapped it tightly in a cloth, apparently to conceal it. And that tightly wrapped cloth prevented the pin mechanism, the striker lever, from fully ejecting after he pulled the pin. It was a dud, essentially, because of how he wrapped it. Pure luck.
Wow. And Arutunian?
He wasn't caught immediately, blended back into the crowd, arrested later. His motivation, when revealed, was purely political. He vehemently opposed U.S. influence in Georgia, saw it as an American puppet state, said he'd try again if he got the chance. Real ideological commitment.
So this was the first really serious, direct attempt by a foreign national in a foreign country driven purely by opposition to U.S. foreign policy.
Exactly. It demonstrated unequivocally that as the U.S. plays a bigger role globally, the president, as its symbol, becomes a target for grievances rooted in complex international conflicts far from U.S. shores. It fundamentally expanded that perceived security perimeter. It had to be global now.
And as we move further into the digital age, we see delusion meeting online radicalization. 2011, Barack Obama, the White House shooter. This case really highlights the internet's role, doesn't it?
It really does. November 11, 2011, Oscar Romero Ortega Hernandez fires multiple shots from a semi-automatic rifle at the White House from over 700 yards away.
700 yards? That's a long shot. Did he hit anything?
Oh, yeah. At least 7 bullets struck the White House residence itself. One actually cracked a pane of bulletproof glass near the first family's living quarters on the second floor.
That's terrifyingly close. But there was a lapse in security response, wasn't there?
A stunning lapse, yeah. The Secret Service initially misidentified the sounds as just cars backfiring or construction noise. They didn't discover the actual bullet damage to the White House until 4 days later. A cleaning crew noticed the holes and the cracked glass.
4 days later. Wow. And his motivation, another modern parallel to Richard Lawrence.
In a way, yeah. Ortega Hernandez's mental instability seemed profoundly shaped and amplified by modern online conspiracy theories, particularly those portraying Obama as the Antichrist or some pawn of a global elite.
So he bought into that stuff online.
Deeply. He believed he was a modern-day Jesus on a divine mission to attack the devil Obama in the White House.
So this is that 21st century synthesis, delusion meets the internet.
Exactly. Where maybe Lawrence's delusion was structured by pamphlets or local gossip, Ortega Hernandez's was molded by extremist internet films, YouTube videos, online forums, things that validated and reinforced his chaotic thoughts. They gave him a ready-made narrative, a clear enemy.
So the internet acts as this powerful accelerator and validator, giving disturbed people a clearer script.
Potentially, yeah. It makes these extreme narratives far more accessible and potent than ever before. It's a significant shift in how personal pathology can get directed toward political violence.
Okay, our final case study brings us right up to the present, almost. The 2024 attempt on Donald Trump at a rally, the Rally Riflemen. This presents a new and particularly troubling set of challenges.
It really does. July 13th, 2024. Campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Thomas Matthew Crooks fires multiple shots from an AR-style rifle from a rooftop overlooking the rally site,
wounding former President Trump, grazing his ear. But tragically, others were hit too.
Yes, one rally attendee was killed and 2 others critically wounded. Crooks himself was killed almost immediately by Secret Service counter-snipers. A rapid, decisive response.
The perplexing part here, though, and what raises really unsettling questions, is the motivation, or the lack of a clear one initially.
Exactly. Initial reports showed Crooks was actually a registered Republican, same party as his target. Those who knew him reported no strong political leanings, no history of extremist rhetoric. Early indications suggested he acted alone. No manifesto found, no clear connection to organized groups. The specific motive remains deeply unclear.
Which makes it almost more disturbing in a way.
It does. Technologically, using a high-powered rifle from a concealed elevated position at an open-air rally, that's the modern sniper scenario. A huge tactical challenge for security.
And politically. The fact he was from the same party with no clear ideology.
It might reflect the intensely fractured, hyperpolarized nature of our modern landscape. It could indicate a political environment where grievances become so personalized, so detached maybe from traditional loyalties, that they lead to this kind of intra-party violence, or acts where the motive is just opaque.
Yeah.
Hard to categorize using our old frameworks. It raises really important questions about political identity and the sources of rage today.
Okay, so that's our chronicle of attacks. We've seen this staggering range of motivations, methods, political backdrops. It's a lot.
It is.
But now let's try to shift from these individual stories to the bigger picture, the overarching analytical frameworks from our sources. Let's really try to connect the dots across these cases. This is where we try to find that psychopolitical pattern where the why it matters comes into focus for you, the listener.
Right, because when we try to deconstruct the mind of the would-be assassin, we often fall back on simple labels like sane or insane.
Which isn't very helpful usually.
No, the sources show it's far more nuanced, more complex than that. What's really illuminating is using a more useful analytical framework. A motivational typology, basically classifying these assailants into distinct, though sometimes overlapping, archetypes.
Okay, archetypes. That helps move beyond just labels. Let's unpack those. Starting with the ideologue. Who are they? What drives them?
Okay, The ideologue. This person is driven by a coherent, shared belief system. Political, religious, social, whatever it is. Their actions, from their perspective, are actually rational within their extremist worldview.
Rational to them, even if violent.
Exactly. They see violence as a necessary tool to make a powerful statement, maybe catalyze a revolution, advance their specific cause. They're motivated by what the sources call an extreme overvalued belief, or EOB.
Extreme overvalued belief, EOB.
It's a belief shared by a subculture or a group, and it completely dominates their personality and actions. They see it as totally valid, totally justifiable, no matter how extreme it lifts to outsiders. For them, the violence is often a logical, if brutal, extension of their deeply held principles.
Okay, so connecting back to our cases, examples would be?
Think of Oscar Collazo and Griselio Torresola, Truman's attackers. They weren't acting out of personal grievance or delusion. They saw themselves as soldiers fighting for Puerto Rican independence. That was the core belief of their nationalist movement.
Right. Or Vladimir Arutyunian, the grenade thrower in Tbilisi, driven purely by his hatred of U.S. influence in Georgia.
Exactly. These individuals often see themselves not as criminals, but as martyrs for a cause, willing to sacrifice themselves for what they believe is a greater good. Their violence is an expression of a collective, albeit extreme, worldview.
Okay, that makes sense. Next archetype.
The delusional. This one is distinctly different from the ideologue.
How so?
The delusional assailant operates in a fundamentally distorted reality because of severe mental illness. The president, for them, isn't primarily a political figure. He's a character in their own private, internal psychodrama.
So their motives are born from beliefs nobody else shares?
Right. Unshared, idiosyncratic beliefs that make absolutely no sense to the outside world. Their reality is entirely internal, unique to them, disconnected from shared social or political narratives.
So the prime example here is Richard Lawrence, right? Believing he was the king of England and Jackson was keeping him from his throne.
Exactly. Or John Schrank, who shot Teddy Roosevelt because McKinley's ghost told him to.
Mm-hmm.
And more recently, Oscar Romero Ortega Hernandez, the guy who shot at the Obama White House, thinking Obama was the Antichrist and he himself was Jesus.
These attackers almost always act alone, don't they? Because their belief system is so private.
Almost always, yeah. It's their own personal narrative. They often lack the capacity for organized planning or what we'd consider rational political engagement.
Okay. Third archetype, the notoriety seeker. This one feels very modern somehow.
It does, though it has historical roots too.
Mm-hmm.
These individuals are driven by this desperate, narcissistic need for fame, public attention. They often have a history of profound personal failure, a deep sense of insignificance.
And assassination is their shortcut too.
To a twisted kind of immortality. The target's fame is paramount. The president, being the ultimate celebrity, the ultimate symbol of power, becomes the perfect vehicle for achieving the notoriety they crave.
They're less interested in the target's politics and more in the spotlight the act brings them.
Exactly. John Hinckley Jr., who shot Reagan, is the absolute quintessential example. His explicit goal was impressing Jodie Foster. He chose the president because of the sheer magnitude of the act. He wanted the world, and specifically Foster, to finally notice him.
Right. And Arthur Bremer, who stalked Nixon, then shot Wallace. His diary showed it was all about making the world pay attention to him, make a statement regardless of who the target was.
Precisely. They don't seek political change, they seek personal infamy.
Okay, and the final archetype.
The aggrieved loner. This category represents a very common, maybe understandable, but still dangerous psychological path towards violence.
Understandable in what sense?
In the sense that their starting point is often a real personal grievance.
Yeah.
They lash out at the president because they see him as the ultimate symbol of a system they believe has personally wronged them.
So their personal problem, losing a job, chronic pain, a failed business, feeling ignored, gets politicized.
Exactly. It gets projected onto the national leader. The attack becomes an act of revenge against what they see as an uncaring or oppressive system. Their private misery finds expression in a public political violence statement, however irrational the connection might seem to others.
So Giuseppe Zangara, who shot at FDR, he fits here perfectly, right? Blaming his terrible stomach pain and hard life on capitalists and presidents, seeking vengeance against the whole system embodied by FDR.
A prime example, yes.
Yeah.
And Samuel Bike, the guy who tried to hijack the plane to kill Nixon. He profoundly blamed the Nixon administration for his financial ruin, his personal failures. For people like them, the president becomes the human face of this abstract, oppressive system that's responsible for their misery. Their internal suffering finds an external target.
Okay, those four archetypes: ideologue, delusional, notoriety seeker, aggrieved loner. That's a really helpful framework. Now, let's zoom out again to the broader context. A really crucial insight from the sources is this idea of the political climate acting as a kind of script for violence. How does that dynamic work?
Yeah, this is maybe the core dynamic that links almost all these cases. While the individual psychology, the delusion, the grievance, the thirst for fame, provides the initial impulse for violence.
The why.
Right, the why. But the external political environment, the climate of the times, provides the script.
What do you mean by script exactly?
It provides the language, the justification, and critically, the specific target for that rage. The political climate doesn't create the assassin out of thin air, but it often directed their aim. It channels their internal turmoil towards a figure like the president or someone representing the state. It provides a narrative, a framework, through which their private anger can be expressed as a public act.
We can see clear historical echoes of this, can't we? Going back again to the King Andrew rhetoric in the 1830s, that public condemnation of Jackson as a tyrant gave Richard Lawrence, in his delusion, a ready-made villain, a political framework for his madness.
Exactly. Or think about the anarchist subculture in the early 20th century. Its anti-government, anti-capitalist ideology provided the intellectual and emotional framework for Zangara's rage against presidents and capitalists. He didn't invent those ideas. He absorbed them from the environment.
And the Cold War, the decolonization movements that shaped the context for the attack on Truman by the Puerto Rican nationalists, their actions were a direct response to a clear geopolitical struggle happening at the time.
Definitely. And the radical counterculture of the 1970s, it clearly influenced both Lynette Frum and Sarah Jane Moore. They saw attacking President Ford as a legitimate form of political protest against the establishment, drawing on that era's revolutionary fervor and deep distrust of authority. The script they followed was one of political rebellion.
And now, in the 21st century, the internet and the 24-hour news cycle, they seem like incredibly powerful engines for creating and distributing these scripts, don't they? It's like the script is being written in real time and delivered right to someone's screen.
Absolutely. Online conspiracy theories, hyper-partisan echo chambers, the sheer volume of inflammatory rhetoric. They provide these ready-made narratives that can profoundly shape and reinforce the worldview of someone who might already be disturbed or aggrieved.
They give chaotic thoughts a clear enemy, a justification, maybe even a sense of community or shared purpose.
Precisely. We saw that with Oscar Romero Ortega Hernandez and the whole Obama is the Antichrist narrative he got online. The internet can validate and accelerate someone's descent into extremism. It makes these scripts far more accessible, far more potent, far more immediate than ever before.
So the big takeaway here is really profound. An assassination attempt is almost never a purely personal act, just born in a vacuum.
Very rarely. It's almost always this psychopolitical hybrid. The individual's internal state provides the why, that raw impulse. But the political climate provides the who and the how. It offers a public narrative that justifies horrific violence, at least in the attacker's own mind. It helps them make sense of the senseless in their subjective reality.
Okay, building on that, let's dive just a little deeper into the mind of the assassin. You mentioned earlier the distinction between pure idiosyncratic delusion and these extreme overvalued beliefs, EOBs. Why is that distinction so important for understanding the threat?
It's subtle, but really crucial. Let's clarify. A delusion, in this context, is a false belief. It's firmly held, despite all evidence against it. But critically, it's idiosyncratic. It's not shared by others in that person's culture or community. It represents a private break from shared reality, often bizarre, illogical, deeply personal.
So again, Richard Lawrence thinking he's the King of England. Or John Hinckley thinking shooting Reagan would win Jodie Foster's love. These are private fantasies, essentially.
Exactly. And that's why these attackers almost always act alone. There's no group that shares their specific, unshakable, often bizarre conviction. It's their own personal narrative, a world they inhabit solely.
Okay, so how is an extreme overvalued belief, an EOB, different?
In stark contrast, an EOB is a belief that is shared by others in a particular group or subculture. Now, it might seem extreme, irrational, or dangerous to outsiders, but it's not technically a delusion because it's rooted in a shared social context. It provides the individual with identity, community, a sense of a shared purpose. It dominates their personality and actions, but it's validated by their peers.
The overvalued part means it takes precedence over everything
Yeah,
else.
over all other aspects of their life, even self-preservation, often.
Okay, so the Puerto Rican nationalists, Collazo and Torresola, their belief that assassinating Truman was a necessary act for independence. That was an EOB. It was a core tenet of their party's ideology, a shared belief validated within their community, however extreme it seemed outside.
Exactly. Or think about Leon Czolgosz, who successfully assassinated President McKinley in 1901. He was driven by an anarchist EOB that all governments were inherently evil, and killing leaders was a justifiable act of liberation. His beliefs, while abhorrent to most, were shared within a specific, albeit fringe, anarchist movement of the time.
Got it. So why does this distinction between delusion and EOB matter so much?
It matters immensely because it helps explain why some attackers are true lone wolves and others are part of organized movements or clearly influenced by specific ideological groups. Ideologues with EOBs are much more likely to have co-conspirators or operate within a network because their mission is socially validated within their group.
It also helps explain their behavior after the attack.
Yes. Ideologues often remain defiant. They politically justify their actions, they articulate their cause clearly. Delusional attackers, on the other hand, express motives that make no sense to the outside world, often retreating further into their private realities. So this framework, EOB versus delusion, gives us a much more sophisticated tool for understanding threat than just a simple sanity test. It moves beyond just a clinical diagnosis to a functional assessment of their beliefs and their potential for violence based on whether those beliefs are shared or entirely private.
It's a really useful distinction. Okay, finally, let's talk about the evolution of the threat itself and the response, because it really is this perpetual escalating arms race, isn't it, between the would-be assassin and the state?
Absolutely. The history of presidential security is largely one of reaction. Each new attempt exposes some fundamental vulnerability, and then the security services rush, often pouring in significant resources to close that gap. It's a constant escalating contest,
And the attacker only needs to succeed once.
while the protector has to be successful every single time. That inherent asymmetry is what drives the constant innovation, the constant hardening of security protocols.
Looking back at the 19th and early 20th centuries, as we saw with Lincoln, Jackson, Theodore Roosevelt, the threats were characterized by shocking proximity, weren't they? Simple weapons, single-shot pistols, revolvers.
The fundamental challenge was direct physical access, just getting within a few feet as a president. And the security response, as we noted, was incredibly slow to develop. Remember Lincoln riding alone?
Right. It took 3 successful assassinations, Lincoln, Garfield, McKinley, before the Secret Service was even permanently assigned to protect the president in 1901.
Before that, their main job was fighting counterfeit money. It was a direct, hard-won lesson paid for in blood.
Then the mid to late 20th century saw more audacious, maybe more technologically complex plots emerge, like Samuel Bike's 1974 plan to hijack a plane and crash it into the White House. That forced security to think about aerial threats, right?
For sure. And the Reagan shooting in '81, even though it was just a simple handgun, it exposed critical vulnerabilities in how the president moved in public. Especially during those impromptu, close contact moments with crowds, it showed how a momentary lapse, a small gap, could be catastrophic.
And that terrifying incident led to huge, lasting changes in Secret Service protocols, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. Beyond just more agents being visible, we saw the development of the famous man-in-the-car system, ensuring the presidential limo, the Beast, is always right there for a rapid evacuation. Major advances in protective gear, body armor, armored vehicles, enhanced intelligence sharing between agencies to try and identify potential threats proactively. Much tighter control over crowd access, secured zones, routes for public appearances. It really shifted the agency towards a more proactive, intelligence-driven, protective model, rather than purely reactive.
But the threats kept evolving. The late 20th and early 21st centuries seemed defined by this shift towards standoff weapons, the challenge of securing large open venues.
Exactly. Francisco Martin Duran's '94 attack on the White House with his semi-auto rifle firing from a public sidewalk. That demonstrated a new long-range threat to even fixed, hardened locations like the White House itself.
And Oscar Romero Ortega Hernandez firing from over 700 yards away in 2011, that showcased the threat from extreme distances.
These incidents really highlighted that the immediate perimeter wasn't enough anymore. The threat zone now extended far beyond the president's immediate vicinity. You had to secure a much wider area.
Which brings us to the 2024 attack on Donald Trump. The sniper on a rooftop at an outdoor rally. That really represents the modern nightmare scenario, doesn't it?
It combines all the toughest elements. A high-powered weapon, a concealed elevated position at a large, relatively exposed crowd in an open venue. It necessitates this far more expansive, truly three-dimensional security posture. You have to be looking up, looking out across vast distances, screening buildings miles away potentially, not just focusing on the immediate crowd.
So the deadly dynamic here is just relentless and clear, as security hardens one vulnerability.
Attackers, driven by their various motivations, adapt and try to exploit new ones. When close access became harder, they turned to long-range rifles. When buildings got hardened, they targeted open-air rallies. If physical access is totally denied, maybe they turn to cyber attacks or inciting others online. It's a never-ending chess match where the stakes literally couldn't be higher.
So bringing this all together now, what does it all mean, this long, violent history of presidential assassination attempts? It doesn't reveal just one type of assassin, does it? Or one single animating ideology?
No, not at all. Instead, what it reveals is this recurring, deeply ingrained process, a dangerous synthesis, where individuals, driven by this huge spectrum of internal motivations from pure ideology to profound personal pathology, they fixate on the president. Why? Because the president is the supreme, tangible symbol of power or fame or grievance or oppression, whatever it is they're focused on.
And those underlying psychological drivers seem pretty timeless, don't they?
They really do. The frustration of the aggrieved loner, the grandiosity of the delusional individual, the desperate alienation of the notoriety seeker, the fervent, sometimes terrifying belief of the ideologue. These internal states, these human conditions, have always existed.
But what changes and what defines the specific character of each attempt is the historical context.
Precisely. The political, the social, the technological environment of any given era provides the specific form. It provides the language, the justification, the precise target, and crucially, the means, the available weapons, the available scripts for an individual's private turmoil to manifest as a public act of political violence. It's that meeting point of the inner world and the outer world, often with devastating results.
Which leads us to a pretty sobering conclusion, doesn't it? The threat of assassination seems like it's just an indelible and constantly evolving feature of the American presidency.
It seems that way. As long as that office remains the nation's most potent symbol, the focal point of its collective identity, its hopes, its fears, its frustrations, it will continue to attract the discontented, the disturbed, and the fanatical. It will constantly test the resolve, the ingenuity, the resources of its protectors.
The motivations will shift with the political tides, the methods will evolve with technology, but that fundamental dynamic, the collision of a powerful symbol with a motivated individual, that seems likely to persist.
Indeed. And that raises a really important final question for you, the listener, to ponder.
Oh.
Given everything we've discussed, the increasing hyperpolarization we see today, the widespread influence of online conspiracy theories providing those instant scripts, the blurring of traditional political loyalties evident in recent events, how might the nature of these attempts continue to shift in the years to come?
Yeah, what implications does this complex psychopolitical pattern have for the fundamental idea of security around such a powerful symbolic office? And maybe more broadly, what does it mean for the health of our democracy itself?
Something to definitely mull over as you go about your day.